Today we're going to take a look at this box called Texture Shape. So let's start by zooming in, Control plus, then H hand so that we get a nice big space to work in. We're going to go back to our custom shape tool, only this time instead of having it a solid, we're going to click on the one in the middle, which is called paths. That way, when we create our shape, it will just create a path that we can decide what we want to fill it with and how we want it to look. So go back to your menu, your drop-down menu, and choose a shape in here that's solid. I think I'll go with this one. And notice when I click and drag in my box, it stays with just an outline. To look at this a little further, we're going to open up our layers palette, but we're going to go to this little tiny one you see here called paths. And you'll notice that there's a work path right there. Now if your paths isn't open, your paths menu, you go to window and it'll be located in the menu and you can click on that. Once you've got your work path right here, if you come down here to the bottom of your palette, you will see that it says Load Path as Selection. I want you to click on that. Now your path has turned into a selection. So let's go back to Layers and let's make sure we have its own layer. And instead of filling it with a gradient or a solid color, we're going to come over here and choose the Path Stamp tool, or the Pattern Stamp tool. So you click on that, and you're going to come up here to your Options palette again, and notice that you have a drop-down menu, and in this drop-down menu there are different patterns that you can choose from. So basically a texture is just a small pattern, so I'd like you to take a pattern that you like, that you would like to fill your shape with. Alright, I'm going to go for the purple flowers. And I want you to make sure that you have a large brush. 199 is a bit big, but to change your brushes you go to the drop down arrow and there's a slider right in here that will allow you to change your brushes. And let's choose a pattern that's a little smaller so it will look more texture. I guess I'll go with this one. And once again, I've got my pattern stamp tool. I click inside here, and now I've got a texture of that shape, which is exactly what I wanted. So let's go to the Layers palette, and we're going to duplicate. As a matter of fact, let's rename this so we know what it is. This is our texture leaf. We're going to duplicate this layer. Now we have two texture leaves, but remember they're stacked on top of each other. And let's deselect it so we don't have the little marching ants going around it. And choose your Move tool, which is the top one in your toolbox, or you could also do V on the keyboard. And let's create a little design inside this box using just these textured leaves. So I'm going to make another one. And remember, you can turn them by bringing your Move tool outside of it. And hitting Enter will apply it. And I'm going to do that again. Make another leaf. There it is. This one, I'm going to make it a little smaller. Holding Shift, remember, as you take the corner box, will maintains its aspect ratio, or that's the proportions. I'm going to turn it a little bit here. Good. Remember, you have to activate the layer when you want to move that particular leaf or that particular object. I'm going to go with one more and have it come down here. So now we're going to put another texture behind our leaves to give our box the whole pattern or shapes. And to do that, let's start with a rectangle marquee. You could choose any of your selection tools if you wanted to do something besides the rectangle marquee, but I'm going to stick with a simple box. So we're going to click and drag a square, and I'm going to use my arrow keys and move it over a bit. And inside here, we're going to fill it with another texture or pattern. So I'm going to make a new layer, and this time we're going to go up to our Edit Fill command, and it will open up a little dialog box. Now notice you could fill it with a foreground color, which in this case would be pink, but we are going to click on this drop-down menu and go to Pattern. And I'd like you to choose another pattern within your little pattern menu. Remember, if you want to look for more patterns that are available, you click this little one right here, and you can go ahead and choose additional patterns. Remember to click Append so that your choices are increased, not that they're restricted. Alright, I'm going to choose one of these textures right down here. And I'm going to say OK here. And notice that it filled my rectangle, or my square, kind of a rectangle, with that texture. Now of course it's on top of my leaves and we don't want that. So I'm going to click and drag this down in my layers palette until all of my leaves are showing again. As a matter of fact, I'm going to deselect, deselect, and I'm going to reduce the opacity on this layer because I don't want this texture in the background to be quite so obvious. So I'm going to go up here in the layers palette, and on the top right hand corner you'll see this opacity. And notice that you have an option of making it fully opaque, which means you can't see through it, or you can let some things be seen through. So I'm going to go at about 60%, and I'm going to make another new layer. And this time I'm going to use a box again, my rectangle marquee. And instead of filling it with a pattern on this layer, I'm going to fill it with a color that will go with the green. So to be able to get another green, I'm going to first go over here with my eyedropper, which is this tool right here in your toolbox, and I'm going to pick up a green right off of the page. That's one of the benefits of this tool, is if you want to match a color, you can match it perfectly. And then I'm going to go into this, down here, my foreground color, and I'm going to make it slightly lighter. And say OK. I'm going to use my paint bucket again, and I'm going to click on it. Now notice that it made it a solid color, and I don't want that. So once again, come over here and bring it down underneath it. And now, if you compare them, notice that it goes from a mono, like a black and white monochromatic, but now it's got a little bit of the green color in it. Good. So I'm going to deselect, and I'm going to do one more boxes to fill up this square. This time I'm going to go right on top of the black lines. I'm going to choose a new pattern, and you know what? I am going to make it a solid frame. So I'm going to pick up one of the greens. Good, I like what it looks like in my foreground color. I'm going to go to, instead of doing my paint bucket, which I know I can do, I'm going to go up here to the Edit Fill command, and instead of the pattern, I'm going to go back and say, you know what, I want you to fill it with my foreground color, and say OK. When I deselect, I'm going to actually take a look at these two, my layer 5 and 6, and I want to move them together. So I'm going to hold Shift on my keyboard and make it so that I select both layer 5 and layer 6. If I come down to the bottom of my layers palette, there's a little link right here. What this does is it temporarily puts these two layers together, so that if I use my move tool and I want to move it around, I'm going to move both of the layers simultaneously. When I look at my box, it looks like it's a little bit off, so I'm going to take my rectangle marquee and I'm going to select a part of this area that's got it. Got to delete them individually. Alright, so now we're finished with our design in the texture shape box.